The mechanic came to fix the millionaire's car. But when he opened the trunk, he found a photo of his mother who had been missing for many years. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Caleb Reyes' small auto repair shop on the outskirts of Charleston. Grease-stained tools hung neatly on the wall, and the familiar scents of motor oil and metal filled the air. At 26, Caleb's hands were already calloused and strong, marked by years of hard work. He wiped sweat from his brow as he finished the last job of the day. A simple oil change for Mrs. Patterson, whose ancient Buick had seen better days. "All done, Mrs. Patterson. Should be good for another 3 months," he said, handing her the keys. "Thank you, dear. How's your sister doing with those college applications?" Caleb smiled, his face softening at the mention of Mia. "She's working on them. Smart as a whip, that girl, gonna make something of herself." After Mrs. Patterson left, Caleb was about to close up shop when his phone rang. The number wasn't one he recognized, but in his line of work, new customers were always welcome. "Reyes Auto Repair," he answered, tucking the phone between his ear and shoulder as he cleaned his tools. "Mr. Reyes, this is Bernard, head of staff at the Prescott estate. Mr. Prescott's Bentley is having some trouble and your shop was highly recommended. Would you be able to make a house call tomorrow morning?" Caleb almost dropped his wrench. The Prescotts were Charleston royalty, old money with fingers in every pie. He'd never set foot on their property, let alone worked on one of their vehicles. "Yes, sir. I can be there at 8. That night, as he sat at their small kitchen table helping Mia with her homework, his mind kept drifting to tomorrow's job. The Prescott mansion was in a different universe from the modest 2-bedroom house he'd scraped together enough to buy after years of saving. "Earth to Caleb," Mia said, waving her hand in front of his face. At 17, she looked more like their mother every day. The same warm brown eyes, the same gentle curve of the cheek. "You're a million miles away." "Sorry, kid. Big job tomorrow, Prescott Mansion." Mia's eyes widened. "Seriously? The Prescotts? Maybe you'll meet Natalie Prescott. I heard she just came back from some fancy school in Europe." Caleb rolled his eyes. "I'm going to fix a car, not attend a debutante ball." Later, after Maya had gone to bed, Caleb found himself standing in front of the hallway closet. Hesitating only briefly, he pulled out the old shoebox he kept on the top shelf. Inside was a faded photograph, creased from years of handling. A woman with Maya's eyes and his own stubborn chin, holding a 5-year-old Caleb with one arm and a baby Mia with the other. Hope Reyes smiled at the camera as if she had the whole world in her arms. The next morning, Caleb arrived at the Prescott estate precisely at 8. The iron gates swung open automatically, revealing a long driveway flanked by ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss. The mansion itself was a testament to old Southern wealth. White columns, sweeping verandas, and manicured gardens that seemed to stretch for acres. Bernard, a thin man with silver hair and immaculate posture, met him at the service entrance. "The vehicle is in the garage, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Prescott is away on business, but he asked that the car be ready by tomorrow evening." The garage was larger than Caleb's entire shop, housing 5 luxury vehicles. The Bentley sat in the center, its midnight blue paint gleaming under the overhead lights. "Keys are in the ignition," Bernard said before leaving Caleb alone. The problem turned out to be relatively straightforward, an issue with the fuel injection system. Caleb worked methodically, losing himself in the familiar routine of diagnosing and repairing. He was nearly finished when he realized he needed a specific tool from his truck. Heading back to his pickup, Caleb popped the trunk to access his toolbox. As he rummaged through it, a gust of wind blew across the driveway, scattering a few loose papers from the Bentley's open glove compartment that he'd set aside. Cursing under his breath, Caleb chased after them. Most were just service records and insurance documents, but as he picked up the last one, a weathered photograph that had slipped from between the pages of the car's manual, his heart stopped. It was his mother. Not a recent photo, but hope as he remembered her, younger, with the same gentle smile that had haunted his dreams for 21 years. She was standing in front of this very mansion, wearing what looked like a housekeeper's uniform. His hands trembled as he stared at the photograph. What was a picture of his mother doing in William Prescott's car? The world around him seemed to fade away as memories crashed over him like waves. His mother's soft voice singing him to sleep, the smell of her perfume. The last time he saw her, "I'll be back before you know it, my brave boy," she had whispered. kissing his forehead. "Take care of your sister until I return." But she never did. The sound of approaching footsteps snapped Caleb back to reality. Quickly, he slipped the photograph into his pocket just as Bernard reappeared. "Everything in order, Mr. Reyes?" "Yes," Caleb managed, his voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside him. "Just finished. The car should run perfectly now." That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. The photograph lay on his kitchen table, illuminated by a single lamp as if it were evidence in a crime scene. In many ways, it was. For years, he'd believed his mother had abandoned them, driven away by the pressure of raising 2 kids alone after their father's death. Aunt Regina, his mother's older sister, had stepped in to help. Though she'd always kept an emotional distance even while providing financial support, she'd been the one to tell them that hope had simply left, unable to cope. "Some women aren't cut out to be mothers," she'd said with a sniff. But now, this photograph suggested something else entirely. Had his mother worked for the Prescotts? What happened to her there? And why had William Prescott kept her picture all these years? Just before dawn, Caleb made a decision. He would return to the Prescott mansion, but not just to deliver the Bentley. He would find out what connection William Prescott had to his mother, and what role he might have played in her disappearance. "I'm coming for you, Mom," he whispered to the photograph, "wherever you are." As the first light of morning filtered through his window, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor, Caleb felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. 2 days later, Caleb parked his battered pickup truck at the service entrance of the Prescott estate. He'd called Bernard that morning with the excuse of needing to make a final check on the Bentley's fuel system. "Mr. Prescott returns this evening," Bernard had told him. "He'll want his car ready." "It will be," Caleb had promised. What he didn't mention was his real intention: to find any connection between the Prescotts and his mother. As he approached the massive garage, Caleb rehearsed his plan: check the car, ask casual questions about longtime staff, maybe get access to other parts of the house. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all he had. Bernard met him with the same impeccable posture and unreadable expression. "Mr. Reyes, the Bentley is where you left it. Please be expeditious." Caleb nodded, wondering if the man ever smiled. "Shouldn't take long." The garage looked the same as before. Gleaming luxury vehicles lined up like soldiers. Caleb popped the hood of the Bentley and pretended to check his work, all while formulating questions that wouldn't raise suspicion. "Been with the Prescotts long?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. 27 years, Bernard replied, hovering nearby. "Must have seen staff come and go over the years." Bernard's eyebrow raised slightly. "The Prescotts value loyalty. Many stay for decades." Caleb's heart quickened. If his mother had worked here around the time she disappeared, Bernard would have known her before he could probe further. The sound of heels clicking against the concrete floor echoed through the garage. Caleb glanced up to see a young woman approaching, tall, with chestnut hair pulled back in an elegant ponytail and wearing what had to be designer clothes, even without the resemblance to the man whose photo he'd seen in the newspaper. Caleb would have known she was a Prescott by the way she carried herself, like someone who had never questioned her place in the world. "Bernard, Daddy texted that he'll be home for dinner after all. Could you tell Mrs. Reynolds to—" She stopped mid-sentence, noticing Caleb for the first time. "Oh, I didn't realize someone was here. Miss Prescott, this is Mr. Reyes. He's performing the repairs on your father's Bentley." She gave Caleb a polite but distant smile. "How do you do?" It wasn't a question, and Caleb didn't treat it like one. He just nodded, his hand instinctively tightening around the wrench he was holding. "I'll inform Mrs. Reynolds about dinner," Bernard said, excusing himself with a small bow. Left alone with Natalie Prescott, Caleb returned to his work. Acutely aware of her presence, she didn't leave as he'd expected, but instead circled the Bentley with idle curiosity. "You're not the usual mechanic," she observed. "No, ma'am. First time working for your family." "Ma'am," she laughed, the sound both genuine and privileged. "I'm not that much older than you, if at all." Caleb didn't respond, focusing on tightening a bolt that didn't need tightening. "So how'd you end up with this job?" "Daddy usually only trusts Anderson's Auto for his precious cars. They recommended me for this specific issue," Caleb couldn't help adding. "Sometimes smaller shops know more than the big ones." Something like respect flickered in her eyes. "Fair enough. What's the problem with it anyway? Fuel injection system. Fixed now. He closed the hood with a decisive thud. Good. Daddy gets grumpy when his cars aren't perfect. She said it with an eye roll that momentarily made her seem more human. Seeing an opportunity, Caleb asked, while I'm here, I should do a quick check on the other vehicles. Preventative maintenance. To his surprise, she shrugged. Be my guest. I know nothing about cars except how to drive them too fast. This was his chance. As he moved to the Rolls-Royce next to the Bentley, he said, Must be nice growing up in a place like this. It's just a house, she replied, though her tone suggested she knew how ridiculous that sounded. Must take an army to keep it running. Pretty much housekeepers, groundskeepers, cooks. She trailed off, apparently bored with the subject. Any of them been here since you were a kid? Something in his voice must have changed because she looked at him more carefully. Why do you ask? Just curious, he said, trying to sound nonchalant. Family business must have some loyal employees. A few, Bernard, obviously, Mrs. Reynolds, our cook. Oh, and Gus, our gardener. He's been here forever. Knows more about this property than anyone. She glanced at her watch. Speaking of which, I need to go. Don't steal anything, she added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The moment she left, Caleb abandoned all pretense of checking the cars. Gus the gardener. That was something. He quickly finished with the Bentley and headed outside, scanning the vast grounds for anyone who might be the longtime gardener. He found an elderly man trimming hedges near the rose garden, his weathered hands moving with the precision of decades of practice. Excuse me, Caleb called out. Are you Gus? The old man looked up, squinting against the sun. Depends who's askin'. I'm Caleb, the mechanic working on Mr. Prescott's car. Just finished up and thought I'd take a look at these amazing gardens before I go. Gus regarded him with suspicion for a moment, then seemed to decide Caleb was harmless. Been tending these gardens for 42 years. Planted most of these roses myself. That's impressive, Caleb said. Genuinely. You must have seen a lot of changes. Some things change, some stay the same. Gus returned to his trimming. Caleb pulled out his phone and, with shaking hands, brought up the photo of his mother. I'm actually looking for information about someone who might have worked here a long time ago. Gus barely glanced at the phone. Not supposed to talk about the family or staff. Please, Caleb said, his voice dropping to a whisper. This is my mother. She disappeared 21 years ago. I just found out she might have worked here. Something in his tone made Gus look at the photo again. Longer this time. A flicker of recognition crossed his face before he could hide it. Don't know her, he said too quickly. Please, Caleb repeated. I'm not looking to cause trouble. I just want to know what happened to her. Gus sighed heavily, the weight of a secret evident in the slump of his shoulders. Meet me at Rosie's diner tomorrow at 10 a.m. Not here. Too many eyes and ears. Before Caleb could thank him, a voice called from behind. Caleb, what are you doing here? He turned to find his Aunt Regina standing near the garden path, her expression a mixture of surprise and something else, something that made his skin crawl. Aunt Regina, what are you doing at the Prescott estate? Her laugh was brittle. I have a standing appointment with Mrs. Prescott for our charity committee. The better question is what my grease monkey nephew is doing chatting up the gardening staff instead of fixing cars. As Regina approached, Gus mumbled something about fertilizer and shuffled away quickly, avoiding eye contact. The potential lead was slipping away right in front of Caleb's eyes. I was just admiring the gardens, Caleb said, forcing a smile. Just finished a job on Mr. Prescott's car. Regina linked her arm through his, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman in her 60s. Well, isn't that a coincidence? My nephew working for the Prescotts. Come, walk me to my car, and you can tell me all about it. As she steered him away from the garden, Caleb glanced back to see Gus watching them, his face grim. Tomorrow at 10? Rosie's diner. It wasn't much, but it was the first real lead he'd had in 21 years of wondering. For the first time, Caleb felt like he might finally discover what had happened to Hope Reyes. Rosie's diner was a Charleston institution, the kind of place where the same customers had been occupying the same booths for decades. Caleb arrived 20 minutes early, choosing a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Each time the bell above the door jingled, his head snapped up, hoping to see Gus's weathered face. By 10:15, Caleb was on his third cup of coffee and second serving of doubt. Maybe Gus had thought better of it. Maybe Regina had somehow intervened. The bell jingled again. This time, Gus shuffled in. Looking even older in daylight than he had on the grounds of the estate, he spotted Caleb immediately and made his way over, sliding into the booth with a grunt. "Wasn't sure you'd come," Caleb said. "Wasn't sure myself till I got in my truck." Gus motioned to the waitress. "Coffee black." They sat in silence until the waitress had come and gone. Finally, Gus pulled a crumpled handkerchief from his pocket and unwrapped it to reveal a small silver locket. "Found this in the rose garden about a week after she disappeared. Figured it was hers, but by then..." He pushed it across the table. Caleb's hands trembled as he picked it up. He recognized it immediately. The delicate filigree pattern. The tiny chip on the back where he'd accidentally dropped it as a child. He'd given it to his mother for her birthday, using money he'd saved from mowing lawns. Inside was a tiny photo of him and baby Mia. "So she did work there," he said, his voice thick. Gus nodded, watching Caleb carefully. "For about 3 years. Good worker, quiet, kept to herself mostly. What happened to her, please? I need to know." The old gardener sighed, glancing around the diner before leaning in. "There was some kind of trouble. Don't know exactly what. One night, there was shouting from Mr. Prescott's study. Your mother ran out crying. Next day, she didn't show up for work. Mr. Prescott said she'd quit, but..." He shrugged. "You didn't believe that?" Caleb prompted. "She left her uniform, her personal items in her locker. Who quits a job like that?" Caleb clutched the locket tightly. "Did you tell the police?" Gus snorted. "Prescotts practically own the police in this town. Besides, wasn't my business. It was my mother," Caleb said, an edge creeping into his voice. Gus had the decency to look ashamed. "Look, son, I'm sorry about your mama, but back then people like me didn't ask questions about people like the Prescotts. Still don't, if they're smart. What about Mrs. Prescott? Was she there that night? She passed away a few years before your mama started working there. Cancer." Gus took a long sip of his coffee. "Listen, I've told you what I know. My advice: let sleeping dogs lie. William Prescott isn't someone you want as an enemy." Caleb pocketed the locket. "I appreciate the warning, and thank you for this." After Gus left, Caleb remained at the booth, turning over what he'd learned. His mother had worked for the Prescotts. There had been some kind of confrontation with William Prescott the night before she disappeared. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd had yesterday. That afternoon, Caleb was elbow deep in an engine when his phone rang. Unknown number, probably a customer, he thought. Reyes Auto Repair. "Mr. Reyes, this is Natalie Prescott." Caleb nearly dropped the phone in a puddle of motor oil. "Miss Prescott, what can I do for you?" "It's about the Bentley. There's a strange noise when I accelerate. Daddy's in New York for the week and I need to use the car tomorrow. I can come by this evening to check it out." "Perfect, around 7. Caleb agreed, his mind racing. This was an opportunity he hadn't expected. Access to the house again, possibly with William Prescott away. At 7 sharp, Caleb pulled up to the Prescott estate. The gate swung open automatically, just like before. This time, however, it was Natalie who met him at the service entrance rather than Bernard. "Thanks for coming," she said, leading him to the garage. "I know it's after hours. It's fine. Where's Bernard?" "Day off. Most of the staff take Thursdays off except for Mrs. Reynolds." In the garage, Natalie handed him the keys to the Bentley. "It makes a sort of whining noise when I hit the gas." Caleb started the engine and listened carefully. "Mind if I take it for a quick spin around the driveway? I need to hear it under load." "Sure, I'll come with you." He hadn't expected that, but he couldn't think of a reason to object. As they cruised slowly down the circular driveway, Caleb pressed the accelerator gently. A high-pitched whine emanated from somewhere under the hood. "Hear that?" Natalie asked. Caleb nodded. "Sounds like a belt issue. Nothing major, but it should be fixed before it breaks entirely." They returned to the garage, and Caleb popped the hood to inspect the serpentine belt. As he'd suspected, it was slightly loose. "Quick fix?" he told her, reaching for his tools. 10 minutes. Tops. Natalie leaned against the car, watching him work. "So, want to tell me why you were really talking to Gus yesterday? And don't say you were admiring the roses." Caleb's hand slipped. nearly catching his finger in the belt. "What? I saw you from my window. You showed him something on your phone." He looked upset afterward. For a moment, Caleb considered lying, but something in her direct gaze made him reconsider. Maybe she could be an ally. "I was asking him about someone who used to work here." "Who?" Caleb hesitated, then pulled out his phone and showed her the photo of his mother. "My mother, Hope Reyes. She disappeared 21 years ago when I was 5, according to Gus. She worked here right before that." Natalie studied the photo, her expression unreadable. "And you think my father had something to do with her disappearance?" "I found her photo in your father's car, the one I was fixing." Her eyes widened slightly. "That's strange." "There's more. Gus told me there was an argument between her and your father the night before she disappeared." Natalie stepped back, crossing her arms. "You think my father what? Hurt your mother, kidnapped her? That's absurd." "I don't know what happened," Caleb said honestly, "but I intend to find out." She stared at him for a long moment, conflict playing across her face. Finally, she said, "Let's say I believe you're not just making this up. What exactly are you hoping to achieve by snooping around our property?" "The truth, that's all. And if the truth is something you don't want to hear, then at least I'll know. My sister and I have spent our whole lives wondering." Something in Natalie's expression softened. "You have a sister." "Mia. She's 17. Barely even remembers our mom." Natalie was quiet for a moment, then said, "Finish fixing the belt. Then I want to show you something." Curious and cautious, Caleb returned to his work. When he was done, Natalie led him from the garage into the main house through a side entrance. The interior of the Prescott mansion was exactly as he'd imagined. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, antique furniture that probably cost more than his entire house. She guided him to a wood-paneled room lined with books. A proper library, like something out of a movie. "This was my father's private study back then," she explained, closing the door behind them. "It's mostly my domain now that he has a home office upstairs." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because this is where Gus said he heard the argument, right?" She walked to a large oak desk and ran her hand along its polished surface. "If something happened between your mother and my father, it happened in this room." Caleb felt a chill run down his spine, standing where his mother had stood all those years ago. "Do you believe me?" Natalie met his gaze steadily. "I don't know yet, but I'm willing to help you look for evidence. My father keeps everything, records, files, correspondence going back decades. Why would you help me?" A shadow crossed her face. "Let's just say I have my own questions about my father, and unlike you, I've never had the courage to seek answers." The study felt like a time capsule. Dark wood paneling absorbed what little evening light filtered through the heavy curtains. Natalie switched on a brass desk lamp, casting amber shadows across leather-bound books and ornate furnishings. "Where do we start?" Caleb asked, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of potential information surrounding them. Natalie moved to a large filing cabinet tucked discreetly in the corner. "Personnel records would be in here, but they're locked." She frowned, trying the drawer. "Dad always keeps the key in his desk." While Natalie searched the desk, Caleb examined the room more carefully. Family photographs in silver frames adorned the mantelpiece. William Prescott shaking hands with politicians, receiving awards, standing on yachts. In one, a much younger William stood beside a beautiful woman who shared Natalie's features. "Your mother?" Caleb asked, pointing to the photo. Natalie glanced up, her expression softening. "Yes, Eleanor Prescott. She died when I was 4. Cancer. I'm sorry." "Found it," she said. Holding up a small brass key, she opened the filing cabinet and pulled out a drawer labeled Household Staff, 1990-2005. For the next half hour, they meticulously went through personnel files, organized alphabetically. When they reached R, Caleb's heart raced, but there was nothing under Reyes. "That's odd," Natalie murmured. "If she worked here, there should be a file. Maybe it's filed somewhere else, or under her maiden name." What was her maiden name? Sanchez. Hope Sanchez. Natalie checked under S, but found nothing. "It's like she never existed here," Caleb said, frustration evident in his voice. "Or someone removed her file," Natalie suggested quietly. The implication hung in the air between them. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, trying to think. Gus said there was an argument the night before she disappeared. Did your father ever mention anything unusual happening around that time? Any kind of scandal or problem? Natalie shook her head. I was only 8 then. Dad never discussed business or problems with me. She paused. But there might be another way to find information. She led him to a built-in bookcase and reached behind a row of leather-bound volumes, triggering a hidden mechanism. A section of the shelf slid sideways, revealing a wall safe. Whoa, Caleb breathed. That's some James Bond stuff. Old houses, old secrets, Natalie replied with a half smile. Dad doesn't know I figured out the combination years ago. I was a curious teenager. She dialed the combination carefully, and the safe door swung open. Inside were stacks of documents, a few jewelry boxes, and several old ledgers. Financial records, she explained, pulling out a leather-bound book labeled 1999-2000. My father documents everything, especially money. They brought the ledger to the desk and began scanning through entries. Most were typical business expenses, but about halfway through, Caleb spotted something. Look at this, he said, pointing to an entry from May 3, 2004, just days before his mother disappeared. The notation read, Hope situation, $50,000, miscellaneous fund. Natalie frowned. That's a lot of money for something labeled so vaguely. And here, Caleb continued, flipping forward a few pages. May 10, 2004, Hope situation resolved, $25,000, legal contingency. His voice hardened. That's the day after she disappeared. They looked at each other, the implications clear. William Prescott had paid someone a significant amount of money related to Hope, right when she vanished. This doesn't necessarily mean, Natalie began, but her voice trailed off. It means something happened, Caleb said firmly. Something that required $75,000 to fix in 2004. That was serious money. Natalie closed the ledger, her expression troubled. I need time to process this, and we need more information before jumping to conclusions. We need to know what the Hope situation was. I might be able to find out. My father's attorney, Martin Blackwell, has been with him forever. He might know something. Would he tell you? Natalie's expression hardened slightly. I am a Prescott, and I can be very persuasive when necessary. Something shifted between them in that moment. A recognition that despite their different worlds, they shared a determination that bordered on stubbornness. I should go, Caleb said, glancing at his watch. Mia will be wondering where I am. Natalie nodded, carefully replacing the ledger and closing the safe. I'll contact Martin tomorrow. Can I call you when I know something? They exchanged numbers, their fingers brushing briefly during the handoff of Caleb's phone. He felt an unexpected jolt at the contact, quickly pulling his hand away. When Caleb arrived home, he found Mia at the kitchen table surrounded by college application forms and a laptop. Where have you been? She asked without looking up. You missed dinner. There's leftover pasta in the fridge. Sorry, got caught up with a customer. It wasn't entirely a lie, but Caleb felt guilty. Nonetheless, he hadn't told Mia about finding the photograph or any of his subsequent discoveries. He didn't want to raise her hopes until he had something concrete. Aunt Regina called, Mia said. Twice. Said it's important. Caleb tensed. Did she say what about? Nope, just that you should call her back ASAP. Mia finally looked up, noticing his expression. What's going on? You've been acting weird the last few days. Nothing, just busy with work. He grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. How's the Stanford application coming? Mia wasn't deterred by his attempt to change the subject. Caleb, you're a terrible liar. Always have been. He sighed, leaning against the counter. It's complicated, Mia. I promise I'll tell you everything soon, but I need to figure some things out first. Is it about Mom? The question caught him off guard. Why would you ask that? Mia closed her laptop. Because I found something. I was looking for my birth certificate for these college applications, and I was going through Aunt Regina's old file box she keeps in the guest room closet. Caleb's heart raced. And I found some letters. They were addressed to Mom, but they'd been opened. She hesitated. They were from someone at the Prescott estate. I only got to skim them before Aunt Regina came home, but they sounded intense, like Mom was in some kind of trouble. Where are these letters now? Caleb asked urgently. Mia's face fell. That's the thing. When Aunt Regina found me with the box, she got really upset. Said I had no business going through her private things. She took the letters. Damn it, Caleb muttered. What exactly did they say? Try to remember. Something about keeping quiet and the arrangement, and there was a mention of money. I think... Mia's eyes suddenly widened. Wait, that's why you were at the Prescott estate, isn't it? What's going on, Caleb? Did you find something about Mom? Caleb realized he couldn't keep Mia in the dark any longer. She deserved to know. He sat down at the table across from her. I found a photograph of Mom in William Prescott's car, he said quietly. She worked at the Prescott estate before she disappeared. Mia's hands flew to her mouth. So she didn't just leave us. I don't think so. I'm still piecing things together. But something happened between her and William Prescott. Something bad enough that he paid $75,000 to handle it. Oh my God, Mia whispered. Do you think he hurt her? I don't know, Caleb admitted. But I'm going to find out. As he filled Mia in on everything he'd discovered, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that they were being pulled into something dangerous. The coincidence of Regina showing up at the Prescott estate just as he was talking to Gus. And now these letters that Mia had found, and Regina had confiscated, it all pointed to a connection he hadn't considered before. What role had his aunt played in all of this? And why was she so determined to keep them from discovering the truth about their mother? The following morning, Caleb arrived at his shop earlier than usual. He couldn't sleep, his mind churning with questions about his mother, Prescott, and now his Aunt Regina. He'd tried calling Regina last night, but the call went straight to voicemail. As he was setting up for the day, the distinctive purr of a luxury engine caught his attention. Through the open garage door, he watched a sleek black Mercedes pull into the lot. The last person he expected to see was William Prescott himself stepping out of the driver's seat. The man was tall, with silver hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to power. His tailored suit probably cost more than Caleb's monthly mortgage payment. Despite being in his 60s, Prescott moved with the vigor of a much younger man. Mr. Reyes, he called out, approaching the garage. Caleb wiped his hands on a rag, trying to calm his racing heart. Yes, sir. William Prescott. He extended his hand. I believe you've been working on my Bentley. Caleb shook his hand, noting the firm grip. That's right. Just a minor belt issue. Your daughter brought it in. Prescott nodded, glancing around the modest shop with what seemed like genuine interest rather than disdain. Natalie mentioned you did excellent work. I always appreciate skilled craftsmanship, regardless of the setting. Thank you, Caleb replied cautiously. What can I do for you today? Is there another problem with the car? No, nothing like that. Prescott's expression turned serious. I think we both know why I'm here, Mr. Reyes. A chill ran down Caleb's spine. Do we? My gardener, my daughter, my financial records. Prescott listed them off calmly. You've been asking questions about events from 21 years ago. About your mother. Caleb stiffened, abandoning any pretense. You knew who I was from the beginning. Of course, when Bernard told me a mechanic named Reyes was coming to the estate, I made the connection immediately. Prescott's gaze was steady. Hope's son. The casual mention of his mother's name from this man's lips sent a surge of anger through Caleb. Where is she? He demanded. What did you do to her? Prescott held up his hands. I understand your anger, but this conversation shouldn't happen here, in the open. Then where? Your mansion? Where you have all the power? I don't think so. Prescott seemed to appreciate his caution. Fair enough. There's a bench by the harbor at the end of Waterfront Park. Public, but private enough to talk. Meet me there in 1 hour. Before Caleb could respond, Prescott handed him a business card with a cell phone number handwritten on the back. If you don't show up, I'll understand. But if you want answers about Hope, that's where I'll be. After Prescott left, Caleb called Mia immediately. He was here, he told her. William Prescott himself. He wants to meet to talk about Mom. Wait, what? Are you going? Mia asked, her voice a mixture of concern and excitement. I think I have to, but I need you to do something for me. If I don't call you by noon, call this number. He gave her Natalie's cell. Tell her where I went and who I was meeting. Caleb, you're scaring me. It's just a precaution. Public place, broad daylight. I'll be fine. After hanging up, Caleb texted Natalie. Your father came to my shop, wants to meet about my mother. Go going to Waterfront Park in 1 hour. Her response came quickly. Be careful. He doesn't know I helped you. An hour later, Caleb found William Prescott exactly where he said he would be, sitting on a bench overlooking Charleston Harbor. The morning sun glinted off the water, and tourists strolled along the promenade, oblivious to the tension between the two men. Thank you for coming, Prescott said as Caleb sat down beside him. I didn't have much choice. Prescott smiled sadly. We always have choices, Mr. Reyes. That's something I've learned the hard way. He gazed out at the water. I knew your mother. She was an exceptional woman. Intelligent, principled, fiercely protective of her children. What happened to her? Caleb asked directly. The night before she disappeared, you had an argument. Prescott nodded slowly. Yes, we did. Hope was working as my housekeeper, but she was overqualified for the position. She had a sharp mind for numbers. One evening, she was cleaning my study and noticed discrepancies in some financial documents I'd left out. What kind of discrepancies? Evidence of what you might call creative accounting. I was diverting company funds to offshore accounts to avoid taxation. Illegal, certainly, but no one was being directly harmed, except the American taxpayer, Caleb pointed out. Prescott conceded with a slight nod. Hope confronted me that night, said she couldn't be part of a household where illegal activities were taking place. She threatened to report what she'd found to the authorities. Caleb's fists clenched. And you couldn't let that happen? No, I couldn't, Prescott admitted. I had too much to lose. We argued. I threatened her, said that if she went to the authorities, I would make sure she lost custody of her children, that I would use my influence to paint her as unstable, unfit. His voice grew quieter. I'm not proud of what I said that night. So she ran, Caleb concluded, the pieces fitting together. To protect us. That's what I believed at the time. She didn't come to work the next day. When she still hadn't appeared after a week, I assumed she'd left town. But the money, Caleb challenged. Your ledger showed payments. $50,000 before she disappeared. $25,000 after. If you didn't do something to her, what was that for? Prescott looked genuinely surprised. You found the ledger entries. You and Natalie have been thorough, he sighed. The first payment was a settlement I offered Hope to keep quiet. She refused it. The second payment was to a private investigator I hired to find her after she vanished. You expect me to believe that? It's the truth. I was terrified she'd gone to the authorities despite my threats, but no investigation ever materialized. When the PI couldn't find her, I decided she'd simply taken my advice and disappeared. Caleb studied Prescott's face, looking for deception. If that's true, then where is she now? It's been 21 years. That's what I've been wondering since Bernard told me Hope's son was asking questions. Prescott leaned forward. I didn't know what happened to your mother, Caleb, but I swear to you I did not harm her. I threatened her. Yes. I frightened her into running. Yes. But I never laid a hand on her. The conviction in his voice was difficult to dismiss, but Caleb wasn't ready to let go of 21 years of suspicion. The photo in your car? Why keep it all these years if you didn't care what happened to her? A pained expression crossed Prescott's face. Guilt. Remorse. A reminder of one of the worst things I've ever done. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. I kept more than just the photo. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter. Caleb recognized his mother's handwriting immediately. She left this on my desk the night she disappeared, Prescott explained. I've kept it all these years. Caleb's hands trembled as he read. William, by the time you read this, I will be gone. What I witnessed in your study cannot be unseen, and the choice you've forced upon me is unbearable. I cannot betray my principles, but I will not risk losing my children. Know that your threats have accomplished their purpose, but at what cost to your soul? Hope. She never mentioned where she was going, Caleb asked, his voice thick with emotion. No, and my investigator never found a trace. It was as if she vanished completely. Prescott reclaimed the letter carefully. But here's what's been troubling me since you started asking questions. The threats I made should have expired years ago, once the statute of limitations on my financial crimes passed. She could have come back without fear. So why didn't she? Exactly, unless someone else was threatening her, Caleb finished, a cold realization dawning. Someone who still had power over her all these years. Prescott nodded grimly. Someone who knew about our confrontation and used it to their advantage. Caleb's mind raced to his Aunt Regina, her strange behavior, the letters Mia had found, her appearance at the Prescott estate, just as he was getting answers from Gus. "I think I need to have a conversation with my aunt," Caleb said, standing abruptly. "Be careful," Prescott warned. "If I'm right, and someone else has been keeping hope away all these years, that person won't be happy to have you uncovering the truth." As Caleb walked away, he heard Prescott call after him. "Caleb, for what it's worth, I truly am sorry for the role I played in your mother's disappearance. And I want to help you find her, if she can be found." Caleb turned back, seeing for the first time not the powerful William Prescott, but an aging man weighted down by old regrets. "I'll let you know what I find out," he said, and meant it. Caleb sat in his truck outside Aunt Regina's pristine colonial home in the historic district. Gathering his thoughts, Regina had been a fixture in their lives since their mother's disappearance. Never warm or particularly loving, but reliably present. She'd helped with bills when things were tight, attended school events, and made sure they had what they needed. Not a replacement for their mother, but a safety net nonetheless. Could she really have been involved in keeping hope away all these years? His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "How did it go with my father?" He quickly typed back. "Better than expected. He claims he didn't hurt her. Going to talk to my aunt now. Something doesn't add up." Her response came immediately. "Want backup?" He hesitated, then replied, "Meet me at Regina's, 247 Church Street." 20 minutes later, Natalie's BMW pulled up behind his truck. She looked out of place on Regina's street in her designer clothes, but her expression was determined as she approached his window. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "No," Caleb admitted, "but I need answers, and something tells me Aunt Regina has them." They walked up to the house together. Regina answered the door in her usual impeccable attire, pearl necklace perfectly positioned above her cashmere sweater. Her practiced smile faltered when she saw Natalie standing beside Caleb. "Caleb, darling, Miss Prescott. What an unexpected surprise." Her voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes were sharp with suspicion. "May we come in, Aunt Regina? We need to talk." She hesitated just long enough to be noticeable before stepping aside. "Of course, I just made some sweet tea." The living room was a museum of carefully curated antiques and family photographs, including several of Caleb and Mia at various ages. Notably absent were any photos of hope. "What brings you here with—" Regina gestured vaguely toward Natalie. A Prescott, of all people. Caleb decided directness was the best approach. "I know Mom worked for the Prescotts before she disappeared. I know about her confrontation with William Prescott over his financial crimes. And I know someone has been keeping her away all these years, even after the threat from Prescott was no longer valid." Regina's face remained impressively neutral, but her hand tightened around her tea glass. "I haven't the faintest idea what you're talking about." "The letters, Aunt Regina," Caleb pressed. "The ones Mia found, from the Prescott estate to Mom. Why did you have them? Why did you hide them from us?" A flicker of something, fear, crossed Regina's face before she regained composure. "Those were personal correspondence that your mother left behind, nothing relevant to her disappearance." "Then why get so upset when Mia found them?" Caleb countered. "Why confiscate them immediately?" Regina set down her glass with a sharp clink. "Because they were private, and quite frankly, none of your business. My mother's disappearance is absolutely my business." Caleb's voice rose. "We've spent 21 years not knowing what happened to her. If you have information, I've told you both repeatedly what happened." Regina cut in sharply. "Hope wasn't cut out for motherhood. The pressure was too much. She left. It's that simple." Natalie, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "Mrs. Reyes, my father admitted to threatening your sister the night before she disappeared. He says he didn't harm her, but he did frighten her into leaving. The question is, why didn't she ever come back, even years later when his threats no longer had power?" Regina's eyes narrowed at Natalie. "Well, isn't that convenient for your father? Admit to a lesser sin to avoid accusation of a greater one? We believe he's telling the truth," Caleb said firmly. "We?" Regina repeated, arching an eyebrow. How quickly allegiances form." She studied them both with new calculation. I see what's happening here. William Prescott has manipulated you both. He's quite good at that, you know? Always has been. You seem to know a lot about William Prescott, Natalie observed. Charleston is a small town, especially in certain circles. Regina stood, smoothing her skirt. Now, if you've finished accusing me of whatever it is you're accusing me of, I have a charity luncheon to prepare for. Caleb didn't move. The gardener at the Prescott estate recognized Mom's photo. Aunt Regina. He found her locket in their garden after she disappeared. She didn't just walk away from us. Something happened to her. Something in Regina's expression shifted. So subtly Caleb almost missed it. For a moment, she looked almost sad. Caleb, some mysteries are better left unsolved. Trust me when I say this pursuit will only bring you pain. Let it go. Let her go. I can't do that. Regina sighed deeply. Then I'm afraid I can't help you now. Please leave, both of you. Outside, Caleb kicked the tire of his truck in frustration. She knows something. I could see it in her face. Definitely, Natalie agreed. But she's not going to tell us voluntarily. So what now? Natalie checked her watch. My father should be back at the estate by now. We should talk to him together. If someone else was involved in keeping your mother away, he might have theories about who. At the Prescott estate, they found William in his home office, a modern space that contrasted sharply with the old world study downstairs. He seemed unsurprised to see them together. I wondered how long it would take you two to join forces officially, he remarked, closing his laptop. I assume your meeting with Regina didn't go well. Caleb shook his head. She shut down completely, but she definitely knows more than she's saying. William gestured for them to sit. I've been thinking about who else might have had motive to keep Hope away. Someone who knew about our confrontation and could use it as leverage against her. It has to be Regina, Caleb insisted. Mia found letters to my mother that Regina had kept hidden, and she's always been the one insisting that Mom abandoned us voluntarily. What would her motive be? William asked. Caleb hesitated. He'd been so focused on discovering what happened that he hadn't fully considered why Regina would be involved. Money, perhaps, Natalie suggested. Was there any inheritance or insurance involved? Caleb's eyes widened with sudden realization. The house. Our grandfather left his house to Mom in his will. After she disappeared, Regina managed the property as trustee until we came of age. She sold it 2 years ago when I turned 24, and the money went into a trust for Mia's education. How much was the property worth? William asked. About $1.8 million. It was in a prime location downtown, and property values had skyrocketed. William whistled low. That's significant motivation, and if Hope was still alive but missing, Regina would have control of the asset without ownership ever transferring. But once she sold it, Natalie questioned. The money went to a trust for Maya, Caleb repeated, then froze. A trust that Regina administers until Mia turns 21. She still controls the money. William leaned forward. We need to find concrete evidence of Regina's involvement. Speculation won't be enough. The letters Mia found would help, but Regina has those now, Caleb said. What about your mother's locket? Natalie asked. The one Gus found. Does it open? Caleb pulled it from his pocket where he'd been carrying it since Gus gave it to him. I haven't been able to get it open. It's been damaged. William held out his hand. May I? After a moment's hesitation, Caleb passed it over. William examined it carefully, then extracted a small tool from his desk drawer. With practiced precision, he worked the locket's hinge until it finally popped open. Inside was the expected tiny photograph of Caleb and baby Mia, but behind it, folded into a minuscule square, was a slip of paper. William carefully extracted and unfolded it. It's an account number, he said, showing them the paper. Swiss bank, by the look of the format. Could this be related to your offshore accounts? Natalie asked her father. William shook his head. This isn't one of mine, but it might be where the real blackmailer was getting paid. We need to find out whose account this is, Caleb said. I can help with that, William offered. I still have contacts in the banking world, discreet ones. As William picked up his phone to make a call, Caleb and Natalie exchanged glances. Just days ago, they'd been strangers from different worlds. Now they were unlikely allies in a search for truth that was becoming more complicated and potentially more dangerous with each revelation. Dad, Natalie said suddenly, there's something else we should check. Your attorney, Martin Blackwell. He's handled all your legal affairs for decades, right? Would he have known about the confrontation with Hope? William's expression darkened. Martin knew everything. And now that you mention it, he and Regina have served on several charity boards together over the years. He set down his phone. Perhaps before we follow the money, we should pay Martin a visit. Martin Blackwell's law office occupied the top floor of a renovated historic building overlooking the Charleston harbor. The waiting area featured leather furniture, maritime paintings, and a receptionist whose smile faded when William Prescott marched in with Caleb and Natalie in tow. Mr. Prescott, Mr. Blackwell isn't expecting you, and he's preparing for court tomorrow. He'll see me, William said, striding past her desk. He always does. The woman scrambled to her feet, but William was already opening the heavy oak door to Blackwell's inner sanctum. Martin Blackwell looked up from his desk, annoyance flashing across his features before settling into a practiced smile. He was in his late 60s, with steel gray hair and the ruddy complexion of someone who enjoyed expensive scotch a bit too frequently. William, what a surprise, and Natalie too. His eyes narrowed slightly when they landed on Caleb. I don't believe I know your friend. This is Caleb Reyes, William said. Hope Reyes' son. The change in Blackwell's demeanor was subtle but unmistakable. A tightening around the eyes, a slight straightening of his posture. I see. And what brings the three of you to my office unannounced? William sat down without being invited, motioning for Caleb and Natalie to do the same. Hope, Reyes, Martin. We're investigating what really happened to her 21 years ago. Blackwell's laugh seemed forced. That's ancient history. Surely, the housekeeper who disappeared. I hardly remember the details. That's odd, Caleb said, considering you handled all the legal aspects of her employment and the aftermath of her disappearance. Did I? Blackwell shuffled some papers on his desk. As I said, it was a long time ago. William leaned forward. Martin, we know someone has been keeping Hope away all these years, using my initial threats as leverage. We know Regina Sanchez has been involved, and we strongly suspect you've been helping her. The attorney's face remained impassive, but his hands betrayed him, clenching slightly. These are serious accusations. William, based on what evidence? Exactly. Caleb pulled out the locket and slid it across the desk. My mother's. Inside is an account number for what we believe is the payment channel for whoever's been blackmailing her. And why would I know anything about that? Blackwell asked, not touching the locket. Because you set up all my offshore accounts back then, William replied. If someone was using similar channels to hide money from the same situation, you'd be the logical person to arrange it. Blackwell stood abruptly. I think you should leave, all of you. If you have accusations to make, have your lawyers contact mine. We just want the truth, Caleb insisted. Where is my mother? Something shifted in Blackwell's expression. A flicker of what might have been guilt. I wouldn't know. But you do know something, Natalie pressed. Blackwell turned to look out his window, his back to them. For a long moment, no one spoke. I did not directly participate in any wrongdoing regarding Hope Reyes, he finally said, his voice oddly formal. My involvement was limited to providing legal advice to all parties involved. All parties, William repeated, including Regina. Blackwell didn't answer immediately. When he turned back, his expression was resigned. Attorney-client privilege prevents me from discussing specific clients. However, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. If someone were investigating a missing person, they might find the records of the St. Clair Convent in Greenville of interest. A convent. Caleb stood up. Are you saying my mother's been in a convent all these years? I'm not saying anything of the sort, Blackwell replied. Professional mask back in place, merely suggesting an avenue of research that might prove fruitful? William stood as well, studying his longtime attorney with newfound suspicion. Martin, if I discover you've been working against my interests all these years, I've always done exactly what was required of me. William? Blackwell interrupted coldly. By all parties who required my services now, if you'll excuse me, I have court preparations to attend to. Outside the office, Caleb could barely contain his excitement. A convent in Greenville. That's only about 4 hours from here. We need to go immediately. Hold on, William cautioned. Blackwell gave up that information too easily. It could be a diversion. Or he's covering himself. Natalie suggested, giving us just enough to satisfy his conscience without explicitly betraying Regina. Caleb checked his watch. It's already past 3. If we leave now, we won't reach Greenville until evening. First light tomorrow, William decided. I'll have my driver take us in the SUV. Better if we travel together. Caleb nodded reluctantly. I need to tell Mia what's happening anyway. He hesitated. And make sure she's somewhere safe. If Regina realizes we're getting close to the truth, bring her to the estate, William offered. We have plenty of room. And security. When Caleb arrived home, he found Mia and Regina sitting at the kitchen table. The sight stopped him cold. There you are, Regina said pleasantly. I was just telling Mia about a wonderful opportunity. The daughter of my friend Caroline is studying at Oxford next semester and needs someone to sublet her apartment. I thought Mia might like to spend some time abroad before college starts. Mia looked uncomfortable. Aunt Regina thinks I should leave next week, but that seems really sudden. And I told her I needed to talk to you first. Caleb struggled to keep his expression neutral. That's quite a generous offer. Aunt Regina, but Mia's right. It's very sudden. Regina's smile remained fixed. The opportunity only just arose. These things happen quickly. I'd like to discuss it with Mia privately. Of course. Regina stood, gathering her designer handbag. Think about it, Mia. It would be such a wonderful experience for you. She kissed Mia's cheek. Then Caleb's. Let me know soon. The offer won't last long. After she left, Mia turned to Caleb with wide eyes. What was that about? She's never suggested anything like this before. Pack a bag, Caleb said quietly. You're not going to Oxford. You're coming with me to the Prescott estate. While Mia packed, Caleb quickly explained everything. William's confession, Regina's likely involvement, and Blackwell's tip about the convent. You think Mom's been at this convent all these years? Mia asked, shoving clothes haphazardly into a duffel bag. Why wouldn't she contact us? I think she's been threatened. Regina probably told her if she ever tried to reach us, something would happen to us. Mia's face paled. You don't really think Aunt Regina would hurt us, do you? Caleb remembered Regina's desperate attempt to get Mia out of the country just as they were closing in on the truth. I don't know, but I don't want to take chances. That night, in a guest room at the Prescott mansion, Caleb couldn't sleep. He stood at the window, looking out over the moonlit gardens where his mother had once walked. A soft knock at the door revealed Natalie, also unable to sleep. Mind some company? She asked. They sat together on a small balcony adjoining his room, the warm night air heavy with the scent of jasmine. Are you ready for tomorrow? She asked. For what we might find. I've been ready for 21 years, Caleb replied. I just never knew where to look. And if she's not there, he turned to face her. Then we keep looking. I'm not stopping until I find her. Natalie reached over and took his hand, her touch surprisingly gentle. I know we've only known each other a few days, but I want you to know, I'm in this until the end, whatever we find. Their eyes held for a long moment, and Caleb felt something shift between them. Something that, under different circumstances, he might have pursued, but not tonight. Tonight was about preparation, not new beginnings. We should try to sleep, he said finally. Tomorrow might change everything. As Natalie slipped back to her own room, Caleb returned to the window. Somewhere out there, perhaps just hours away, his mother might be waiting. Had she given up hope of ever seeing her children again? Did she think about them every day, as they had thought about her? For the first time in years, Caleb allowed himself to imagine a reunion, to hope that the empty space in their lives might finally be filled. We're coming, Mom, he whispered to the night. Hold on just a little longer. Dawn broke with a gentle mist hovering over the Prescott estate grounds. William's driver had the black Escalade waiting at the front entrance as Caleb, Mia, Natalie, and William emerged from the house. The tension was palpable, none of them quite believing they might be hours away from finding hope. I got a text from my banker contact this morning, William said as they settled into the vehicle. The Swiss account number from the locket belongs to a shell corporation called Sanchester Holdings. Sanchez and Rochester, Natalie deduced immediately. Regina and Martin. That confirms they've been working together, Caleb said, his jaw tightening. But it still doesn't explain why. Mia, who had been quiet until now, looked up from her phone. I've been researching the St. Clair convent. It's not just a regular convent. It's a cloistered one. Extremely strict. Once someone enters, contact with the outside world is severely limited. Perfect place to hide someone who doesn't want to be found, William observed grimly. The 4-hour drive to Greenville passed with intermittent conversation and long stretches of tense silence. Caleb's mind raced with questions. What would he say to his mother after all these years? Would she even recognize him? Was she there voluntarily, or had she been coerced? By midday, they were approaching the outskirts of Greenville. The St. Clair Convent sat on several acres of wooded land, secluded from the nearest residential area by a long, winding driveway. High stone walls surrounded the property, with a heavy iron gate at the entrance. "How do we get in?" Mia asked as they parked just outside the gate. "It's not exactly a tourist attraction. Leave that to me," William said confidently. Approaching an intercom system beside the gate, after a brief exchange with an unseen gatekeeper, the gate buzzed open. "I told them I'm considering a substantial donation to their restoration fund," William explained with a wink. Inside, the convent grounds were immaculately maintained. Flowering gardens, stone pathways, and a small chapel with stained glass windows that caught the midday sun. A middle-aged nun in a traditional habit met them at the entrance to the main building. "Mr. Prescott, I'm Sister Agnes, the convent administrator. Mother Superior is unavailable today, but I'm authorized to discuss potential donations." William smiled graciously. "Thank you for meeting with us, sister. These are my associates, my daughter Natalie, and Caleb and Mia Reyes." Sister Agnes's expression flickered briefly at the Reyes surname. So quickly, Caleb almost missed it, but it was enough to confirm they were in the right place. "We're particularly interested in supporting your outreach programs," William continued smoothly. "Perhaps you could give us a tour while we discuss possibilities." Sister Agnes hesitated. "Our cloister is private, Mr. Prescott. I can show you the chapel and public areas only." "That would be wonderful," he agreed. As they followed Sister Agnes through the convent's public spaces, Caleb scanned every face they passed, looking for his mother, but the few nuns they encountered were either too young or too old to be hope. When Sister Agnes stepped away briefly to speak with another nun, Natalie whispered to Caleb, "We need to get deeper into the private areas. I'll create a distraction," William offered. "You three find a way into the residential wing." When Sister Agnes returned, William launched into an elaborate discussion about the historical architecture of the chapel, gradually steering her toward the far end of the building. Caleb, Natalie, and Maya slipped away, finding an unattended corridor that led deeper into the convent. They moved quickly and quietly, passing several small, Spartan rooms, cells where the nuns lived. "How will we find her?" Mia whispered anxiously. "There must be dozens of nuns here." "Let's split up," Caleb suggested. "Cover more ground. Text if you find anything." Natalie took the upper floor while Caleb and Mia continued along the main corridor. Most rooms were empty or occupied by elderly nuns who clearly weren't hope. The few they encountered seemed too surprised by the intrusion to immediately raise an alarm. Approaching the end of the corridor, Caleb noticed a door slightly different from the others, heavier, with a small sliding panel at eye level. It was locked. "Why would they lock a nun's room?" he murmured. He knocked softly. "Hello? Is anyone in there?" No response. He knocked again, louder. "You shouldn't be here," a stern voice said behind them. They turned to find a tall, severe-looking nun watching them with suspicion. "This area is private." "I'm sorry, sister," Caleb said quickly. "We got separated from our tour. We're looking for someone who might be staying here. Hope Reyes." The nun's face hardened. "There is no one by that name here. You need to leave immediately." "Please." Mia stepped forward. "She's our mother. We haven't seen her in 21 years. Something flickered in the nun's eyes. Recognition. Then conflict. "Wait here," she said finally, and disappeared down the corridor. Caleb and Mia exchanged hopeful glances. A moment later, Natalie appeared, slightly breathless. "Found anything?" she asked, before they could answer. A commotion at the far end of the corridor drew their attention. William was being escorted, rather firmly, by Sister Agnes and 2 other nuns. "I found them, Mother Superior," the severe nun said, returning with an elderly woman whose face bore the deep lines of decades of austerity. "Mr. Prescott," the Mother Superior said coldly, "your donation pretense was transparent. We've already been warned about you. Warned, William repeated. By whom? That's not your concern. I must ask all of you to leave immediately, or we'll be forced to call the authorities. Please, Caleb interjected. We're looking for Hope Reyes. We have reason to believe she's been kept here against her will. The Mother Superior's expression revealed nothing. This is a house of God, young man. No one is kept here against their will. Now leave. As they were being escorted toward the exit, Caleb's phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number. Greenhouse, east side of property, 10 minutes. He showed it to the others discreetly. Once outside the main building, William engaged Sister Agnes in a lengthy apology, creating an opportunity for the others to slip away toward the eastern grounds. The greenhouse was easy to spot, a large glass structure gleaming in the afternoon sun. As they approached, Caleb's heart hammered in his chest. Could this finally be it? Inside, the air was warm and thick with the scent of soil and growing things. A slender figure stood with her back to them, tending to a row of herb plants. She wore gardening clothes rather than a habit, and her dark hair, streaked with gray, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Hello?" Caleb called softly. The woman stiffened but didn't turn around. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice barely audible. That voice, even after 21 years, Caleb would have recognized it anywhere. "Mom?" Mia's voice broke on the word. The woman finally turned, and there she was. Hope Reyes, older, her face lined with years of worry, but unmistakably their mother. Her eyes, so like Mia's, filled with tears as she looked at her children. "My babies," she whispered. "Look at you both, all grown up." Mia rushed forward first, throwing her arms around Hope. Caleb stayed rooted to the spot. A storm of emotions, joy, anger, confusion, rendering him momentarily immobile. "Why?" he finally managed. "Why didn't you come back to us?" Hope gently disentangled herself from Mia, wiping tears from her cheeks. "I wanted to, every single day. I wanted to. But I couldn't. Because of Regina," Caleb said. It wasn't a question. Hope's eyes widened. "You know, we're piecing it together," Natalie said from behind them. "My father admitted his role in threatening you, but it was Regina who kept you away all these years, wasn't it?" Hope nodded slowly. "Regina and Martin Blackwell, they..." She stopped suddenly, looking past them with horror. "No, oh God, no." They turned to see Regina standing in the greenhouse doorway, Martin Blackwell beside her, and between them, her arms firmly gripped by two men in dark suits, was Natalie. "I thought you might try something like this," Regina said calmly. "So predictable, all of you." She gestured toward Natalie. "Come with us quietly, Hope, or William's precious daughter will face consequences, your choice." Caleb stepped protectively in front of his mother and sister, his mind racing for a solution. The greenhouse offered no alternative exits. They were trapped. "Let Natalie go," he demanded, his voice steadier than he felt. "This is between our families. She has nothing to do with it." Regina laughed, the sound utterly devoid of warmth. "On the contrary, she has everything to do with it now. The Prescott heiress and the Reyes boy. Quite the romantic subplot you two have developed." "How did you find us?" Hope asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Regina smiled coldly. "Did you really think Mother Superior wouldn't call me the moment someone came asking about you? I've been the convent's most generous benefactor for 20 years. Martin Blackwell stepped forward, his expression tense. "This has gone far enough, Regina. We agreed. No violence. Plans change." "Martin!" Regina turned to the two men holding Natalie. "Take her to the car." "No!" Caleb lunged forward, but one of the men pulled out a gun, stopping him in his tracks. "I wouldn't," Regina warned. "These men are professionals and they're being paid very well." Hope moved to stand beside Caleb. "What do you want, Regina? You've taken everything from me already. My children, my freedom, my life." "Not everything," Regina replied. "There's still the matter of grandfather's inheritance. The trust fund for Mia becomes fully accessible when she turns 21, but only if both her legal guardians approve the disbursement." "Both guardians?" Mia asked. Confused, Hope's face drained of color. "Me and Regina. Father made us co-trustees of his estate." "Exactly," Regina said with satisfaction. "As long as Hope was missing but not declared dead, I had control of the assets. But with Maya turning 21 next month, things become complicated. I need Hope's signature, or proof of her death, to maintain control. The pieces finally clicked into place for Caleb. That's why you've kept her alive all these years. You needed her for the paperwork. Initially, yes, Regina admitted. And keeping her in a convent was so convenient. Isolated, restricted access, her every communication monitored. But I've grown tired of the arrangement. It's time for a more permanent solution. Martin grabbed Regina's arm. This wasn't the agreement. You said we'd get the signatures and be done with it. Regina shook him off. 21 years I've waited, Martin. 21 years of playing the dutiful aunt to these brats, watching the money that should have been mine being saved for their futures. I'm done waiting. As Regina and Martin argued, Caleb noticed movement outside the greenhouse. William was creeping toward the building, staying low to avoid being seen through the glass walls. Their eyes met briefly, and William gestured toward the far end of the greenhouse. Understanding dawned. Caleb needed to create a distraction. The account, he said loudly, drawing everyone's attention. Sanchester Holdings. We found it, Regina. The offshore account where you've been hiding the money you've been skimming from the trust. Regina's eyes widened with genuine surprise. How did you... At that moment, the emergency sprinkler system in the greenhouse erupted. Drenching everyone inside, William had found the external controls. In the chaos that followed, Caleb charged forward, tackling the man holding Natalie. The gun went off, the bullet shattering a glass panel. Mia screamed. The second man released Natalie to help his partner, but William burst through the door, swinging a shovel that connected solidly with the back of the man's head. Run! William shouted, grabbing Natalie's hand. Caleb scrambled to his feet, reaching for his mother and sister. They raced toward the exit, slipping on the wet floor. Regina, soaked and furious, lunged for Hope, catching her arm. You're not going anywhere. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Hope, with a strength born of 21 years of suppressed rage, whirled around and struck her sister squarely in the face. Regina staggered backward, crashing into a shelf of terracotta pots that collapsed around her. Outside, they sprinted toward the parking area, Martin Blackwell's shouts fading behind them. The convent grounds had erupted into chaos, with nuns emerging from buildings to see what the commotion was about. The car's this way, William directed, leading them toward where the driver had parked the Escalade. They piled in, breathless and dripping. Go, William commanded the startled driver. Now! As they sped down the convent's long driveway, Caleb finally had a moment to truly look at his mother, sitting beside him in the back seat. She was thinner than he remembered, with streaks of gray in her dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years of worry. But when she smiled at him through her tears, she was unmistakably the woman from his childhood memories. I never thought I'd see you again, Hope said, her voice breaking as she reached out to touch his face. My brave boy. Mia leaned across Caleb to grasp her mother's hand. We never stopped looking for you. We never believed you left us willingly. I would never have left you, Hope affirmed. Never. But Regina threatened to hurt you both if I ever tried to contact you. She had people watching you constantly. The men who were with her at the greenhouse, Caleb asked. Hope nodded. Regina has always had connections with unsavory people. When she found out I had witnessed William's financial crimes, she saw an opportunity. She made me believe that if I didn't disappear, not only would William ensure I lost custody of you both, but you would be in physical danger from his associates. I never threatened physical harm, William protested from the front seat. I was desperate to keep my financial misconduct quiet, but I wouldn't have harmed children. But Regina convinced me otherwise, Hope explained. And once I was hidden away in the convent, she made it clear that any attempt to escape or contact you would result in accidents befalling my children. I believed her. She's my sister, but she's always been capable of terrible things. But why the elaborate scheme? Natalie asked. Why not just, I don't know, have you sign over your rights to the inheritance? Because our grandfather's will was specific, Hope explained. The inheritance couldn't be transferred until both my children were of age. It was meant to protect them. The only way Regina could control it was if I was missing but presumed alive. If I were declared dead, the inheritance would go directly to Caleb and Maya once they turned 21, with no trustee. And with Mia's birthday coming up next month, Caleb began. Regina was planning to force me to sign papers transferring control to her permanently, then eliminate me, Hope finished. That's why she's been trying to get Mia out of the country, to isolate her, make her easier to manipulate. We need to get somewhere safe, William said. Regina won't give up easily. Not with that much money at stake. My cabin, the driver suddenly suggested. In the mountains north of here. No one knows about it except my family. William nodded. Good thinking, Frank. Take us there. As the Escalade sped through the countryside, Caleb kept his arm around his mother, afraid that if he let go, she might disappear again. 21 years of questions, of emptiness, of wondering, and now she was here, real and solid beside him. I'm so sorry, Hope whispered, looking between her children, for all the years we lost. It wasn't your fault, Caleb assured her, his voice thick with emotion. But we're together now, and we're going to make Regina pay for what she's done. Outside the window, storm clouds gathered on the horizon as they raced toward the mountains, leaving behind the convent that had been Hope's prison for over 2 decades, but none of them harbored any illusions that their ordeal was over. Regina's desperation would make her more dangerous than ever. Frank's cabin was nestled deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains, accessible only by a narrow dirt road that wound through dense forest. By the time they arrived, dusk had settled, casting long shadows across the modest wooden structure. Inside, the cabin was rustic but comfortable. A large main room with a stone fireplace, 2 small bedrooms, and a basic kitchen. It's not much, Frank apologized. But it's off the grid. No one will find us here. It's perfect, William assured him. Thank you, Frank. While Frank built a fire, the others took stock of their situation. They had escaped with little more than the clothes on their backs, which were still damp from the greenhouse sprinklers. Hope sat on the worn sofa, Mia pressed close to her side, unwilling to lose physical contact with the mother she barely remembered. Caleb watched them from across the room, still processing the reality of his mother's presence. For so long, finding her had been his driving purpose. Now that she was here, a tangle of emotions threatened to overwhelm him. Relief, joy, and lingering anger at the years stolen from them. We should contact the authorities, Natalie suggested, breaking the silence. Regina threatened us at gunpoint. Kidnapped me. That's enough to have her arrested. William shook his head. We need irrefutable evidence first. Regina is well connected in Charleston, without proof. It would be our word against hers. I have proof, Hope said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Over the years, I managed to collect evidence of what Regina and Martin were doing. Copies of documents, recorded conversations. I hid them in the one place I knew Regina would never look. Where? Caleb asked. The family mausoleum at Magnolia Cemetery. There's a loose brick behind our grandfather's plaque. I convinced one of the younger nuns to hide the package there during a prayer visit to the cemetery 2 years ago. William nodded approvingly. Smart, but retrieving it will be dangerous. Regina will expect us to return to Charleston. She'll be watching my house and the shop, Caleb agreed. And probably your estate too. Then we need a plan, William said decisively. A way to draw Regina out while retrieving the evidence, as they strategized late into the night. The years of separation began to melt away between Hope and her children. She learned about Caleb's determination to build his business from nothing, and Mia's academic achievements and dreams of Stanford. In turn, they discovered how their mother had survived her captivity, finding purpose in the convent's greenhouse, cultivating rare medicinal herbs that became renowned among herbalists across the region. It was the only freedom they allowed me, Hope explained. Working with the plants kept me sane. Later, as the others slept, Caleb found himself alone with his mother on the cabin's small porch. The night was clear, stars blazing in the mountain sky with an intensity rarely seen in the city. I used to look at the stars and wonder if you were seeing them too, Hope said softly. If you were thinking of me. Every day, Caleb replied, his voice rough with emotion. Not a single day passed that I didn't think about you. Wonder where you were. Your father would be so proud of the man you've become, she said, touching his face gently. Taking care of Mia, building your business. I did what I had to do. Hope studied him in the moonlight. There's so much anger in you still, not just at Regina, but at me too, I understand. No. Mom, it's okay, she interrupted. You have every right to be angry. I should have found a way to come back to you both. Regina was threatening to hurt us, Caleb reminded her. You were protecting us. Maybe at first, Hope acknowledged. But as the years passed, I allowed fear to control me. I should have been braver, should have found a way to fight back sooner. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of lost years between them. When this is over, Caleb finally said, we'll have time. Time to heal, to know each other again. Hope smiled, eyes glistening with tears. Yes, time is the greatest gift now. The next morning, they set their plan in motion. William used Frank's satellite phone to contact a trusted security team from his company. Meanwhile, Caleb, Natalie, and Maya prepared to return to Charleston to retrieve Hope's evidence. Are you sure you don't want me to come with you? Hope asked anxiously. You need to stay hidden, Caleb insisted. If Regina sees you, she'll know exactly what we're doing. As they prepared to leave, William pulled Caleb aside. Take care of my daughter, he said. His usual commanding tone softened with genuine concern. I will, Caleb promised. And when this is over, you and I need to have a conversation about your intentions toward mine. A smile tugged at William's lips. Fair enough. The drive back to Charleston was tense but uneventful. They avoided the main highways, taking back roads that added hours to their journey, but reduced the chance of being spotted. Magnolia Cemetery was shrouded in evening mist when they finally arrived, its ancient oaks draped with Spanish moss that swayed in the gentle breeze. The Sanchez family mausoleum stood in the oldest section, a small marble structure with weathered columns. Keep watch, Caleb instructed Natalie as he and Mia entered the mausoleum. Their grandfather's plaque was on the back wall. Caleb ran his fingers along the edge, finding the loose brick Hope had described. Behind it was a waterproof pouch containing a flash drive, a small notebook, and several folded documents. Got it, he whispered to Mia, who was standing nervously by the entrance. Just as they were about to leave, Natalie appeared in the doorway, her expression tense. Someone's coming, she hissed. 2 cars just pulled up at the main gate. The 3 of them pressed back into the shadows of the mausoleum, watching as headlights swept across the cemetery grounds. The cars stopped nearby, and several figures emerged. Regina, Martin Blackwell, and the same 2 men from the convent. They must have been watching the cemetery, Natalie whispered. Or someone tipped them off, Caleb replied grimly. They watched as Regina directed the men to spread out and search the grounds. We're trapped, Mia whimpered. Caleb's mind raced. The mausoleum had only one entrance. Once Regina's men reached them, there would be nowhere to run. Just then, his phone vibrated with a text from William. In position, northeast corner. This way, Caleb urged, guiding Natalie and Mia toward the back of the mausoleum. There's a maintenance access panel Hope told me about. The panel was small and rusty, but it opened with a firm push, revealing a narrow space between the mausoleum and the cemetery wall. They squeezed through just as flashlight beams swept the interior of the structure they'd vacated. Crouching low, they made their way along the wall toward the northeast corner of the cemetery. In the distance, they could hear Regina's voice, shrill with anger, ordering her men to search every mausoleum. At the corner, they found William waiting with Frank and 2 security professionals. Did you get it? William asked urgently. Caleb patted his jacket pocket. Everything. Then let's end this, William said grimly. The confrontation that followed in the cemetery's Gothic chapel would be etched in Caleb's memory forever. Regina's face when she realized she was surrounded, not just by William's security team, but by local police officers that William had alerted with the evidence from Hope's hidden cache. The desperation in her eyes as she realized her decades-long scheme was crumbling. You've ruined everything, she spat at Caleb. You couldn't leave well enough alone. You stole our mother from us, he replied evenly. You stole 21 years we can never get back. As the police led Regina and Martin away in handcuffs, a profound sense of closure washed over Caleb. The mystery that had defined his life was solved. The emptiness that had haunted their family for 2 decades was finally being filled. Later that night, in the living room of the Prescott mansion, Hope held her children close, tears flowing freely as they began the long process of healing. William stood nearby, watching the reunion with a mixture of regret for his own role in the initial separation and relief that he had helped make this moment possible. Natalie moved to stand beside Caleb, her hand finding his. What happens now? she asked softly. He looked at her, then at his reunited family, and felt a sense of possibility he'd never known before. Now, he said, we start living again. Outside, the first light of dawn broke over Charleston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of promise.